one day.
Useless. Traitor.
Funeral may as well mark dead to that fact the mother only.
There's this moment early in Hamnet where you realize what kind of film you're watching. Agnes, played by Jessie Buckley, with this raw, almost feral presence, is standing in a field, not doing anything dramatic. Just standing there, wind moving through the grass around her, and the camera holds on her face as she breathes. You can see her thinking, processing, feeling the world around her in a way that most people don't, and it hits you. This isn't a period piece trying to wow you with corsets and candlelight. This is something else entirely. This is grief, rendered as landscape. Chloé Zhao's adaptation of Maggie O'Farrell's 2020 novel Hamnet arrived in theatres with the weight of massive expectations. The book won the Women's Prize for Fiction and the National Book Critics Circle Award, spending months on bestseller lists by reimagining the death of William Shakespeare's only son, the 11-year-old boy named Hamnet, who died in 1596, just a few years before his father would write Hamlet. O'Farrell's genius was centering not Shakespeare, whom she never names directly in the novel, but his wife, Agnes Hathaway, the woman history barely remembers, portrayed as a healer with an almost supernatural sensitivity to the natural world. The book asked a question that haunted readers. What if the greatest play ever written was born from a father's unbearable grief? Zhao, fresh off her complicated relationship with the Marvel machine after Eternals, co-wrote the screenplay with O'Farrell herself, and the film premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival in September 2025 to a 10-minute standing ovation. It won the festival's top prize, the People's Choice Award, instantly positioning it as an Oscar frontrunner. Focus Features and Amblin Entertainment released it strategically, limited release, November 26, 2025, then wide on December 5. By late January 2026, it had earned 20.6 million domestically and 32 million worldwide against a 30 million budget. Modest numbers but strong for an intimate historical drama with zero action sequences or franchise appeal. Critics went all in, 86% on Rotten Tomatoes with 315 reviews counted, 84 on Metacritic. Universal acclaim, they said. The kind of film that makes people cry in their car afterward. But here's the thing about Zhao choosing this project. After Nomadland won her the Oscar for Best Director in 2021, making her the first woman of color and second woman ever to win that award, she could have done anything. Anything. Instead of another sprawling superhero epic or prestige studio offering, she went small, intimate. She went to 1580s England to tell a story about a mother who can read falcons' flight patterns but can't save her son from the plague. Wild choice, brilliant choice. Zhao's approach to Hamnet aligns perfectly with her signature style, naturalistic performances, magic hour cinematography, landscapes that function as emotional mirrors. She brought in cinematographer Luca Jesal, the same DP who shot Ida and Cold War, both nominees for Best Foreign Language Film, and together they crafted something that feels both historically grounded and dreamlike. The production design, led by Fiona Crombie, The Power of the Dog Cruella, doesn't fetishize the period. The clothes look worn, the houses feel lived in. Mud and dust and the texture of actual life permeate every frame. And then there's the casting. Jessie Buckley as Agnes is inspired. She's proven herself fearless in films like The Lost Daughter and Men, always willing to go to uncomfortable emotional places. Paul Mescal as William Shakespeare brings a very specific energy, vulnerable masculinity, artistic ambition, tangled with guilt, a man who loves his family but keeps choosing his work in London over them. Joe Alwyn plays John, William's brother. Noah Jupe, the kid from A Quiet Place, and Honey Boy takes on the title role of Hamnet with this delicate, observant quality that makes his eventual fate even more devastating. The film's production spanned multiple locations across England, shooting primarily in Yorkshire and Warwickshire during spring and summer of 2024. Zhao insisted on practical locations whenever possible. Actual Tudor-era buildings, real countryside, tangible environments her actors could inhabit. No green screen, no digital augmentation of landscapes. She wanted authenticity, the kind you can feel in your bones when you watch it. Steven Spielberg and Sam Mendes serving as producers gave the project serious industry credibility and protection. Spielberg through Amblin, Mendes through Neil Street Productions, both powerhouses who understood Zhao's vision and gave her creative freedom. That backing mattered. It meant she could take her time with scenes, could prioritize atmosphere over pace, could trust that the studio wouldn't panic about a historical drama with minimal plot in the traditional sense. Because Hamnet doesn't really follow conventional narrative structure. It moves more like memory, more like grief itself, circling, doubling back, finding meaning in small gestures rather than big dramatic speeches. The film opens not with Hamnet's death, but with Agnes's gift, her strange ability to sense things others can't. We see her childhood, her meeting with William, the early passion between them. Then the family life, 3 children, William gone to London for long stretches, Agnes managing the household in Stratford-upon-Avon, and then illness strikes. The plague arrives in their village, and one of the twins, Hamnet, falls sick while his father is away. Zhao structures the film in a way that mirrors the novel's approach. We know from the title what happens, so the suspense isn't whether Hamnet dies, but how everyone survives it, or doesn't survive it, emotionally speaking. The story moves between past and present, between William's growing success in London's theatre world and Agnes's increasingly isolated life in Stratford. The twins, Hamnet and Judith, share this deep connection. The film suggests that Judith, the girl, was actually the sicker one initially, and that somehow fate or circumstance led to her brother taking her place in death. That ambiguity, that terrible what if, haunts the entire narrative. Max Richter composed the score, and if you know his work, The Leftovers, My Brilliant Friend, Sleep, you know he specializes in music that feels like emotional weather. Not intrusive, not manipulative, but present. His compositions for Hamnet lean heavily on strings and piano, sparse arrangements that give the images room to breathe. Sometimes the film goes silent entirely, letting natural sound carry scenes, wind through trees, distant bird song, the creak of floorboards. Editor Afonso Gonçalves, who cut Nomadland and worked with Zhao again here, alongside Zhao herself in the editing room, crafted a rhythm that requires patience from viewers. Scenes don't rush. Conversations happen in real time. People sit with their feelings before speaking. It's the opposite of algorithm-optimized content, the opposite of films designed for distracted viewing. You have to lean in. You have to give yourself over to it. The critical response praised exactly these qualities. Reviews called it devastating, luminous, a meditation on loss and art, proof that Zhao's Nomadland success was no fluke. The New York Times piece titled What Hamnet Lost and Gained on the Way from Page to Screen examined how O'Farrell and Zhao adapted the novel, noting that they compressed some timelines, heightened certain visual metaphors, especially around birds and flight, and made William slightly more present than in the book, where he remains mostly off-screen. That choice, showing William more fully, gives the film a different emotional architecture. We see his guilt in real time, watch him receive news of his son's death days after it happens, witness him channeling that grief into creating Hamlet years later. The PG-13 rating might surprise people expecting something harsher, but the film earns it. There's nothing graphic here, no gratuitous suffering. The plague is shown mostly through symptom and absence rather than body horror. Grief is rendered through silence, through tears, through Buckley's face doing work that most actors couldn't touch. Getting this made wasn't simple. Historical dramas without clear commercial hooks are tough sells in the current market. But the O'Farrell novel's success gave them leverage and Zhao's Oscar gave them credibility. Focus features. The same studio behind Lost in Translation, Brokeback Mountain, Milk specializes in exactly this kind of prestige adult drama. They knew how to market it. Position Buckley and Mescal, both rising stars with serious acting credibility, emphasize the Zhao factor, lean into the award season timing, and trust that word of mouth would build. And it worked. The film found its audience slowly but surely. Not a blockbuster, but a genuine cultural movement for people hungry for cinema that treats them like adults, that trust their intelligence and emotional capacity. The kind of film that sparked book club discussions and think pieces about art and parenthood and how we process loss. What Zhao understood, what she's always understood, is that landscape isn't backdrop. Environment shapes character. The English countryside in Hamnet functions as both prison and sanctuary for Agnes. She knows every plant, every animal behavior, every weather pattern. But that knowledge can't protect her. Her gift, her attunement to the natural world, fails when it matters most. That tension between wisdom and powerlessness runs through every frame. This is also quietly a film about marriage, about two people who love each other but want different things. Agnes wants William home. William wants London, wants the theatre, wants to matter beyond Stratford's small world. Neither is wrong. Both are hurting each other without quite meaning to. And then their son dies, and that existing crack in the foundation becomes a chasm. Zhao doesn't judge either of them. That's crucial. She shows Agnes's frustration with William's absence, and she shows William's genuine passion for his work. She shows Agnes's sometimes severe intensity, and she shows William's conflict between ambition and duty. Complex people making human choices, and then tragedy reshaping everything. The film opens with hands. Agnes's hands, specifically, moving through herbs hanging from rafters in a dim cottage. No establishing shots of villages or sweeping vistas, just this immediate tactile intimacy. Her fingers brush dried lavender, rosemary, thyme. She's mixing something, a remedy, and the camera stays close enough that you can see the dirt under her fingernails, the rough texture of her skin. This is labor. This is knowledge earned through years of practice. Then we're outside, and here's where Zhao's visual language kicks in fully. Agnes walks through a field at dawn, mist rising from the ground, and the light. God, the light hits at that perfect angle where everything glows. Zhao shoots her almost like a documentary subject, handheld camera following at a slight distance, observing rather than announcing. She stops, looks up. A falcon circles overhead and Agnes watches its pattern with total focus. Her daughter Susanna, maybe 8 years old, stands beside her. "What do you see?" the girl asks. "A kill soon," Agnes says. "He's hunting the field edge, where the mice run." And sure enough, the falcon drops. Swift, precise, deadly. Susanna looks at her mother with this mixture of awe and confusion that we'll see throughout the film. Agnes's gift, her ability to read animal behavior, plant properties, weather shifts, the subtle language of the natural world, is both inheritance and isolation. People come to her for remedies, for help with sick children or livestock, but they also fear her slightly. There's something witchy about her, though the film never goes full supernatural. Zhao keeps it ambiguous. Is Agnes genuinely clairvoyant or just deeply observant? Does she actually sense things others can't, or has she simply paid attention where others haven't? The movie doesn't answer that, doesn't need to. We meet the rest of the household through morning routines. The twins, Hamnet and Judith, are 11 old enough to have distinct personalities but still possessing that twin connection where they finish each other's thoughts. Judith is the bolder one, quicker to speak, more restless. Hamnet is quieter, more observant, content to watch and listen. Noah Jupe plays him with this gentle curiosity, like he's always noticing details no one else sees. Kid's a revelation, honestly. William isn't home. Agnes prepares breakfast, manages the children, and you see in her efficient movements the reality of her life. Single parenting for stretches of months while her husband pursues theatre work in London. When the kids ask when father's coming back, she doesn't have an answer. Soon, she says, but her face suggests she doesn't believe it. The Stratford-upon-Avon of Zhao's Hamnet feels lived in and unglamorous. Crombie's production design avoids the typical period piece polish. Walls are stained from smoke and age. Floors are uneven. The clothes the family wears show signs of repair, patches sewn over worn-through fabric. This isn't poverty exactly, but it's not comfort either. William's work brings money, but not wealth, respectability, but not security. We get a flashback, though flashback feels too structured a term for how Zhao handles time in this film. It's more like memory surfacing. Agnes as a younger woman, maybe 19 or 20, living with her family. Her mother died when she was young, and her father remarried a woman who clearly doesn't understand her. Agnes spends her time in the fields and woods, collecting plants, studying animal tracks, learning from an older woman in the village who teaches her healing arts. Then William. Their first meeting happens at a market. He is performing, reciting something. We don't hear it clearly, but we see Agnes stop to watch. Buckley plays this moment beautifully. Agnes isn't charmed by his performance exactly. She is intrigued by his intensity, the way he loses himself in the words. After, they talk. He's 18, she's older by several years, historically accurate. Anne Hathaway was 26 to Shakespeare's 18 when they married. He's ambitious, full of ideas, desperate to be more than a glovemaker's son. She's different. Strange, powerful in ways he doesn't fully understand. Mescal brings this boyish earnestness to young William that makes their attraction believable. He's drawn to her precisely because she's not like anyone else he knows. She challenges him, sees through his performance to something real underneath. And Agnes, who exists on the margins of society, whose gifts make her suspect, finds in William someone who looks at her with desire rather than fear. The courtship is brief. We see fragments, a walk through woods, Agnes showing William which mushrooms are poisonous, which heal. A conversation where he tells her about his dreams of London, the theatre, making something that lasts. Her telling him she's pregnant, the rushed marriage, her family disapproving, his family uncertain. Then children arriving quickly, Susanna, then the twins. Zhao doesn't linger on the early romance. She's more interested in the slow erosion of it under the weight of practical life. William starts traveling to London more frequently, at first for weeks, then months. He sends money, sends letters, but Agnes is effectively alone, managing 3 children, healing neighbors' ailments, running a household without help. There's a scene, maybe 15 minutes into the film, where Agnes receives a letter from William. She can't read it herself. Historical note, most women of her class couldn't read, though O'Farrell's novel and Zhao's film give Agnes a kind of literacy through nature that exceeds book learning. She has to ask a neighbor to read it aloud. The letter is full of William's excitement about a new play, about his growing reputation, about opportunities opening up. Very little about missing home. The neighbor finishes reading and looks at Agnes with pity. Buckley's face does everything in that moment. Pride in her husband's success, resentment at his absence, shame at needing someone else to access his words, love and anger tangled together so tightly neither can breathe. Back to the present timeline, 59-6, the year of Hamnet's death, summer, hot and getting hotter. The twins are studying with a tutor. William arranged learning Latin and rhetoric. Hamnet struggles with the abstract concepts, but excels at observation, at describing what he sees in precise detail. The tutor notes this. He has his father's eye for detail, he says, but his mother's connection to the world. The relationship between Agnes and her son carries this particular tenderness. Hamnet helps her gather plants, asks questions about their properties, listens when she explains how to identify bird calls. Judith is more interested in the house, in cooking and managing domestic tasks. The film doesn't judge either twin for their preferences. It just shows them as different people who happen to share a birthday. But watch how Zhao shoots the twins together. They are often framed in mirrors or doorways, creating visual echoes of each other. When one speaks, the camera sometimes lingers on the other's reaction. There's a scene where they are playing in the garden, some invented game with elaborate rules, and they move in this almost choreographed way, anticipating each other's movements. The film is building toward the tragedy through these moments of connection, showing you how intertwined these two lives are, so that when one is severed, you feel the violence of it. News arrives that plague has been spotted in a nearby village, not in Stratford yet, but close enough to worry about. Agnes begins preparing, stocking herbs, teaching the children to wash hands frequently, keeping them away from market crowds. She knows enough about contagion to be afraid, even if she can't articulate germ theory. Experience has taught her that illness spreads through contact, through proximity. William is supposed to return home for the summer. He writes that he is delayed. The theatre company has opportunities, important performances, connections that could lead to patronage. Agnes reads this letter, has someone read it to her, and something hardens in her expression. Buckley shows us Agnes making a choice in real time. She will not beg him to come home. She will not explain the fear she feels about the plague. She will manage alone, as she always has. This is where the film's critique of William sharpens, though subtly. Zhao never makes him a villain, but she shows his self-absorption, his ability to rationalize absence, his genuine belief that his work matters more than daily presence. He loves his children theoretically, abstractly. He writes them into his plays as characters. But Agnes loves them practically, physically. She's the one who knows Judith prefers her bread without crusts, that Hamnet has nightmares about drowning, that Susanna hides when she is overwhelmed. There's a conversation between Agnes and William's brother, John Joe Alwyn, playing him as a steady, reliable presence, where the tensions become explicit. John helps Agnes with household repairs. William neglects. He's there for the daily needs. And in a moment of frustration, Agnes says something like, "Your brother writes about love and loss, but he doesn't stay to feel it." John defends William, but gently. He's making something important. "And what am I making?" Agnes asks. "3 humans, fed and taught and kept alive. Does that not matter?" The film doesn't resolve this argument. It just sits with it. Lets both perspectives exist. William's art does matter. We know it will outlive everyone in this story by centuries. But Agnes's work matters too, and receives no recognition, no lasting record beyond the children themselves. Zhao structures these early sections almost like an anthropological study. We see Agnes's days in detail. Morning routines, healing work, managing conflicts between the children, bartering at market, preparing meals, teaching survival skills. The camera watches with this patient, accumulating attention. Nothing is rushed. Every action is given weight. And then the other timeline continues developing. William in London, the theatre world, rehearsals, performances. The Globe, though the film doesn't make a big deal of it, doesn't pause to give us tourism shots. We see it through William's eyes, as workplace rather than monument. He collaborates with other playwrights, navigates the politics of patronage, drinks with actors after shows. There's a camaraderie there, a sense of belonging he doesn't seem to find at home. Mescal makes interesting choices with William in these scenes. He is more relaxed in London, more himself. In Stratford, around Agnes, he seems diminished somehow, guilty, defensive, aware that his presence is obligation rather than desire. But in London, working on a play, he glows with purpose. The tragedy is that both versions are real. He is not lying when he writes Agnes about needing to be there for his work. He genuinely comes alive through it, but that aliveness requires distance from his family, and the film holds that paradox without trying to resolve it. The last section of this opening act focuses on a festival day in Stratford. William is still away. Agnes brings the children to a summer fair. Music, dancing, market stalls. Judith wants to try every game. Hamnet is content to walk beside his mother, observing. Susanna finds friends and runs off with them. Agnes stands watching her children, and Buckley's performance here is remarkable. She is not smiling, not frowning, just present, soaking in this moment. And you realize she knows. Not consciously, not prophetically, but in the way mothers sometimes sense the fragility of everything. The film is building this awareness in her, this almost unbearable presence to the temporary nature of joy. The scene goes golden, magic hour. Zhao's favorite time to shoot. The festival sounds blur into music, kids laughing, summer wind through trees. The twins run together, racing each other across a field, and the camera holds on them in silhouette against the setting sun. Beautiful and devastating because we know what's coming. The film isn't manipulating us with this beauty. It's showing us what will be lost. What is always being lost even as we live it. Hamnet wakes before dawn most mornings. Not because he has to, no one's forcing him, but because he likes the quiet. The house still asleep around him, just him and the early light coming through shutters. He dresses slowly, careful not to wake Judith beside him. They share a room, always have. Sometimes he wonders what it would be like to sleep alone, to not hear her breathing all night, to not know immediately when she's having bad dreams. He can't really imagine it. Zhao gives us these intimate portraits of Hamnet throughout the film's first half, building a complete human before taking him away. The kid's routine. He goes downstairs, finds his mother already up, she barely sleeps, it seems, and together they go outside. This is their time. Agnes teaches him things she doesn't teach the girls, not because of gender exactly, but because he's the one who's interested. How to track foxes by their prints, which clouds mean rain versus which mean storms. The way light changes before an earthquake, though they haven't had one in years. Everything communicates, Agnes tells him one morning. You just have to learn the language. Hamnet nods, serious. He gets it, or thinks he does. Like how father uses words. Different, Agnes says. Words can lie. Weather can't. There's this whole thread in the film about language and truth that runs underneath everything else. William works with words, manipulates them, creates worlds from them. Agnes works with silence and observation, with the things that exist before and beyond language. Hamnet sits between them, drawn to both, belonging fully to neither. We see more of his relationship with his sisters. Susanna, the oldest at 13, treats him with a mixture of affection and impatience. She is reaching that age where childhood games bore her, where she is looking ahead toward marriage and household management, toward the adult world. Hamnet still wants to climb trees and catch frogs. The distance between them is growing, though neither quite acknowledges it. But with Judith, his twin, his mirror, the connection remains absolute. They have their own language, half-formed words and gestures that no one else understands. Inside jokes that aren't even really jokes, just shared moments that accumulate into private meaning. When Judith gets frustrated with embroidery lessons, she hates sitting still. Hamnet makes faces behind the tutor's back until she smiles. When Hamnet struggles with Latin conjugations, Judith slips him a drawing that somehow helps him remember. The film shows this twinship without sentimentalizing it. They fight, sometimes viciously. Judith tells him he's too slow, too quiet, too content to watch while she wants to act. Hamnet tells her she's too loud, too impulsive, too quick to jump without looking. Then an hour later, they're inseparable again, the argument forgotten or transformed into something else. One scene kills me. The twins are helping Agnes in her workroom, sorting dried herbs. Judith gets bored quickly, starts throwing stems at Hamnet. He ignores her. She escalates, knocking over a jar. Agnes snaps at her, rare for Agnes to lose patience, but she does. Judith storms out. Hamnet continues working, methodical and steady. But after a few minutes, he looks toward the door where his sister left, and you can see it on his face. He feels incomplete. Part of him is missing. He finishes what he's doing, then quietly follows her out. Cut to them sitting by a stream, not talking, just sitting together. That's the resolution. Presence, not words. Zhao punctuates these family dynamics with the growing threat of plague. It moves closer to Stratford through the summer. First a village 10 miles away, then 5, then 2. People start avoiding markets, suspicious of travelers. A family down the road locks themselves inside their house after the father shows symptoms. Days later, a cart comes to collect bodies. Agnes's fear becomes palpable. Buckley plays it as this coiled tension in her body. She moves faster, speaks more sharply, checks the children constantly for signs of fever or swelling. She burns herbs meant to purify air. Medical understanding of the time. She makes the children drink bitter tinctures. She prays to God and to older gods, hedging her spiritual bets. And she writes to William. Finally, breaks her pride and writes. Has the letter written for her? Begging him to come home. Not because she needs his help managing, she doesn't. But because if something happens, if the plague reaches their house, they should be together. The family should be whole. The letter takes days to reach London. We see William receive it, read it, or have it read to him. The film keeps both William and Agnes at similar levels of literacy, which is historically appropriate and also symbolically significant. His face shows conflict. He's in the middle of something important, a new play that's gaining attention. The theatre company needs him. There are debts to pay, a household to support. If he leaves now, he might lose opportunities that won't come again. He writes back, soon, another week. He promises. Agnes receives this response and says nothing, just folds the letter and tucks it away. Her face tells us she expected this answer, maybe even knew it before writing, but she had to try. The household continues, lessons and meals and chores. John visits more frequently, checking on them. There's never anything romantic between Agnes and John. The film is clear about that. But there's a tenderness in how he looks at her, an unspoken recognition of what she carries alone. He fixes a loose shutter, helps Hamnet with mathematics, plays a game with Judith that makes her laugh. Does the things an uncle does or a father should. One evening, all three children sit with Agnes while she prepares supper. They're talking about London, about when they might visit father there, see a play performed. Susanna wants to see the grand houses. Judith wants to see the Thames, the bridges. Hamnet asks a different question. Does father think about us when he's there? Agnes pauses, considers her answer carefully. He thinks about everyone, all at once. That's his gift and his burden. But does he miss us specifically? Hamnet presses. Or just the idea of us? Buckley and Noah Jupe are doing incredible work in this scene. Agnes doesn't want to answer honestly because the honest answer might hurt. But Hamnet is asking a real question and he deserves truth. I think, she says finally, he misses who he is when he's with us. But he prefers who he is when he's away. Judith objects. That's not true. Father loves us. Both things can be true, Agnes says quietly. The children process this. Susanna, oldest and therefore most aware of adult complications, nods slightly. Judith looks angry, defensive of her absent father, and Hamnet just looks sad, like he already knew the answer and hoped to be wrong. This moment encapsulates the film's emotional core. William isn't villainous, he does love his family, but his love is theoretical, distant, less immediate than his love for his work. And Agnes, bitter and resentful as she sometimes is, also understands him. She married him knowing he was ambitious, knowing he wanted more than Stratford could offer. She just didn't anticipate how completely his ambition would consume him or how alone she would feel inside a marriage. The twins' 11th birthday approaches. Agnes plans a celebration, small given the plague fears, but meaningful. She bakes a special cake with honey. John brings gifts, a new knife for Hamnet, embroidery silks for Judith. Susanna has made them each something, though the film doesn't specify what. The celebration happens in their home, just family. William isn't there. He sent gifts weeks earlier, with a letter explaining he'll be home soon, promising a proper celebration then. The gifts are expensive proof of his success, but impersonal. A leather-bound book neither twin can fully read yet. Fancy clothes neither will wear except for special occasions they don't have. Objects that say, I thought of you, but also I don't really know you anymore. Hamnet holds the book carefully, trying to feel grateful. Judith sets her gift aside almost immediately. Neither says anything negative. They've been raised to be polite, to appreciate. But the disappointment sits heavy in the room. Agnes watches her children try to hide their hurt, and something shifts in her. The resentment she's been containing hardens into something colder. Resolution maybe. Acceptance. She can't change William. Can't make him choose differently. So she'll stop waiting for him to. She'll stop factoring him into her decisions and plans. She'll live as if she's already alone because functionally she is. But the birthday celebration continues. They eat cake. John tells funny stories about William as a boy, reminding the children their father was once young and foolish and human. The twins play their private games. Susanna watches with that oldest sibling fondness mixed with distance. Zhao films this celebration with warm light and close flaming, keeping us intimate with the family. But there's also this quality of preservation to how it's shot, like she's capturing something already becoming memory even as it happens. The golden light, the faces glowing, the laughter. It all has this elegiac quality. Not manipulative, just aware. The film knows what we know. This is one of the last times this family will be together like this, intact and whole. After the cake, after the gifts, Hamnet goes outside alone, just needs air. Agnes follows him after a moment, finds him sitting in the garden looking at stars. She sits beside him. They don't talk for a while. Then, I wish father was here. I know. Do you think he wishes he was here too? Agnes considers. I think he wishes he was the kind of man who wants to be here. But he's not that man. Hamnet processes this. Are you angry at him? Every day, Agnes admits. And I love him every day too. It's confusing. This conversation, this honest acknowledgement of mixed feelings of love and anger coexisting is so crucial. The film refuses to simplify its characters' emotions. Agnes isn't a saint suffering nobly. She's a woman with legitimate grievances and real love tangled together in a knot she can't untie. Hamnet leans against his mother. I don't think I want to be like father, he says. I think I want to stay. Agnes pulls him close. You can be whoever you want, but even as she says it, we sense her fear. Because in this time, this place, boys don't get unlimited options. Hamnet will grow up, will have to choose a trade or profession, will likely end up pulled into his father's world or locked into something that doesn't fit him. Agnes can teach him to read fox prints and identify medicinal plants, but that knowledge won't earn him a living, won't give him status or security. The scene ends with them sitting together under stars, and the camera pulls back slowly, widening to show their house, the village beyond, the dark countryside stretching away, making them small but not insignificant, showing them as part of something larger, the landscape, history, the vast mechanism of time that keeps moving regardless of individual lives. The next morning, Judith wakes with a headache, not severe, just enough to make her irritable, to make her want to stay in bed. Agnes checks her carefully. No fever, no swelling, no rash. Probably nothing. Summer heat maybe, bad sleep. Stay home from lessons today, Agnes tells her. Rest. Judith complains. She doesn't want to fall behind, but she also feels genuinely unwell. Hamnet offers to stay with her. Agnes considers, then agrees. The tutor can do without both twins for one day. So that day, Hamnet stays home, sits with Judith, brings her water, tells her stories. And Judith, grateful for his company, starts feeling better by afternoon. By evening, she's restless again, energetic, wanting to go outside. The next day, she's fine, fully recovered from whatever minor thing afflicted her. And Hamnet starts showing symptoms. It starts as a headache. Same as Judith had. Hamnet wakes and his head throbs, but he's tough about it, doesn't complain right away. He dresses, comes downstairs, and Agnes sees it immediately in how he moves, slower. Careful, like sudden motion might hurt. Your head? He nods. Agnes touches his forehead. Warm, but not burning. Not yet. Upstairs, she says. Back to bed. Hamnet obeys without argument, which tells her more than words could. He never willingly goes back to bed. The boy would work through exhaustion, through minor injury, through anything to stay with her during morning routines. So his compliance now carries weight. Means he feels worse than he's admitting. Judith watches her brother climb the stairs, and something passes across her face. Guilt, maybe, or recognition. The film doesn't explain it verbally. Zhao trusts the actors, trusts the audience. But we understand Judith had this first. Whatever this is, she gave it to him. Agnes prepares her strongest remedies. Willow bark for fever, chamomile for rest, other herbs whose name she speaks like prayers. She brings the mixture upstairs, helps Hamnet drink. He grimaces at the taste but finishes it. You'll be fine, she tells him. Judith recovered in a day. I know, Hamnet says. It's just a headache. But by afternoon, it's not just a headache. Fever arrives, climbing fast. His skin goes from warm to hot to burning. Agnes strips him down, places cool cloths on his forehead, his chest, his wrists. She knows fever management, knows the signs of when heat becomes dangerous. And this is climbing too quickly. John comes by, finds Agnes in crisis mode. Fetch the physician, she tells him. Agnes, the cost. I don't care. Fetch him. John goes. The physician arrives hours later. There are many sick people, many calls for his services. He examines Hamnet with practiced efficiency, checks his throat, his lymph nodes, the rash that's appeared on his chest. His face reveals nothing, which is itself a revelation. Plague, Agnes asks, though she already knows. The physician won't commit. Fever sickness. Could be many things. But his tone suggests he's lying kindly. Keep him cool, make him drink, pray. That's it. That's all 16th century medicine offers. Prayer and hope and waiting. The physician leaves. Agnes stays. Sits beside her son as light fades from the room, as his fever continues climbing. Judith hovers in the doorway, pale and silent. Susanna keeps the house running, preparing food no one eats, maintaining routines that now feel absurd. William is 2 days' ride away. Even if they sent word now, he wouldn't arrive in time. In time for what? Agnes doesn't finish the thought. Night comes. Hamnet's fever peaks. He is delirious, speaking to people who aren't there, arguing with shadows. Agnes holds his hand, keeps changing the cool cloths, whispers things mothers whisper when there's nothing else to do. Stay with me, stay, you're strong, you can fight this. But can he? The film makes us sit with this question, makes us watch as a child burns with fever, as a mother exhausts every tool in her arsenal and finds them all inadequate. There's no music in these scenes, just breathing, labored, struggling, just the sound of cloth in water, just Agnes murmuring. Judith finally enters the room, approaches the bed. Hamnet, she whispers, his eyes open, fever bright, unfocused. Judith? I'm here. Am I dying? The question lands like a stone. Judith looks at her mother, desperate for the right answer. Agnes wants to lie, wants to promise he'll be fine, but something in her son's gaze stops her. He's asking honestly. He deserves honesty. I don't know, Agnes says. I'm trying to stop it. Hamnet nods, accepting this. If I die, will you be all right? And here, right here, Buckley does something extraordinary. Her face collapses and rebuilds itself in seconds. The grief threatens to consume her entirely, but she locks it down because she has to, because her son is watching and asking and needs an answer. No, she says, I won't. But I'll live anyway. Hamnet seems satisfied with this truth. His eyes close again. The night stretches. Agnes doesn't sleep, doesn't leave his side. Judith falls asleep in a chair by the door, her body angled toward her twin, even unconscious. Susanna checks on them periodically, brings water no one drinks. John stands outside the room, helpless, waiting to be useful. Dawn comes. The fever hasn't broken. If anything, Hamnet is worse, his breathing shallow and rapid, his skin mottled with rash. Agnes keeps working, keeps trying, but we see defeat beginning to show in her movements. The desperate energy of early crisis gives way to something heavier, dread, acceptance arriving too early, before death itself, because the body knows before the mind admits. Around midday light streaming through the window, birds singing outside in grotesque contrast to what's happening inside. Hamnet's breathing changes, becomes irregular, stops, starts, stops. Agnes knows this pattern, has seen it before in others. John, she calls, voice cracking. Wake the girls. John rouses Judith, brings Susanna. They gather around the bed, this small family, incomplete because William isn't there and never will be for this moment. They watch Hamnet's chest rise and fall, the gaps between breaths growing longer. Agnes holds his hand. You can go, she whispers. It's all right, you can let go. Judith is sobbing, trying to be quiet, failing. Susanna holds her, both girls shaking. And then, simply, without drama, Hamnet stops breathing. One breath, then no more. His face relaxes from the tightness of fever into something that looks almost like peace. The room goes silent, except for Judith's crying and Susanna's sharp intake of breath. Agnes doesn't move, keeps holding his hand, now still and already cooling. Her face is stone, her eyes are dry. She's gone somewhere else. Somewhere beyond immediate feeling into shock, so profound it looks like calm. John murmurs a prayer, pulls a sheet gently over Hamnet's face. And the film sits with this moment, doesn't rush past it. The camera holds on Agnes's hand, still gripping her dead sons through the sheet, on Judith doubled over with grief, on Susanna standing frozen, unable to process, on John with his head bowed, praying or crying or both. Time moves strangely after death. The film captures this, the way hours become elastic, meaningless. There are rituals, washing the body, preparing for burial, notifying authorities, arranging with the church. Agnes performs these tasks mechanically. Her hands know what to do even when her mind has gone blank with shock. They bury Hamnet 2 days later. Small ceremony. The plague makes people cautious about gatherings, even funerals. Few neighbors attend. The priest speaks words that mean nothing and everything. They lower the small coffin into earth, and Agnes watches dirt cover her child with eyes that seem to see nothing. William still hasn't arrived. A messenger was sent the day Hamnet died, but 2 days' ride means William probably received news yesterday. He's traveling now, rushing home to a crisis already resolved by the cruelest resolution. At the graveside, Judith won't leave. They have to physically pull her away. She keeps looking back at the fresh dirt, calling for her brother, saying she's sorry over and over. Sorry for what? For being sick first? For recovering when he didn't? For the randomness of survival? Agnes finally picks her daughter up, bodily lifts her, though Judith is almost as tall as she is now, and carries her away from the grave. He's not there, Agnes tells her. That's just Earth. Hamnet is somewhere else now. Where? Judith demands. Agnes has no answer. She is not even sure she believes in the afterlife she's supposed to believe in. I don't know. Back home, the house feels wrong. Hamnet's absence is louder than his presence ever was. His clothes still hang on their peg, his shoes by the door, the book William sent for his birthday barely opened. Everything in place and everything unbearable. Judith won't sleep in their room alone. Can't bear it. She moves into Susanna's bed, clings to her sister like drowning person to driftwood. Susanna lets her, understands without being told. Agnes goes into the twins' room alone, sits on Hamnet's side of the bed, picks up his shirt, holds it to her face. Still smells like him, sweat and herbs and boy. She stays there for hours, holding fabric, breathing her son. When she finally emerges, she finds John downstairs. He's cleaned up from the funeral, built up the fire, set out food that no one will eat. He looks at Agnes and opens his mouth to speak, but she shakes her head. No words. There are no words that help. Instead she asks, "Where is William? Should arrive tomorrow, I think, or the day after." Agnes nods. Feels nothing about this information. Her husband is coming home to discover his son is dead. Once this would have filled her with some emotion, anger at his lateness, relief at his presence, something. Now she just feels hollow. "You should sleep," John offers. "I can't." "Then sit. Rest, at least." Agnes sits, stares at the fire. John stays with her in silence, keeping vigil, being the brother-in-law who shows up when his brother won't. The film gives us a sequence here, wordless, just images of the house at night. Judith curled with Susanna, both awake but pretending sleep. John asleep in a chair by the fire, keeping watch. Agnes standing at the window, looking toward the road William will arrive on, seeing nothing. And intercut with this, William on that road, riding hard, pushing his horse, face set with urgency and dread. Mescal makes interesting choices here. William's grief is real. We see it in how roughly he wipes at his eyes, how his jaw clenches, how he pushes his horse faster. But there's also guilt, and the guilt is eating him alive. He knows he should have been there, knows he chose wrong, knows and has to live with knowing. He arrives the next afternoon, dismounts before his horse fully stops, bursts into the house calling for Agnes, for the children, voice clacking with fear and hope that maybe the message was wrong, maybe it's not as bad as they said. Agnes meets him in the doorway, her face tells him everything. "No," William says, not a question, not a statement, just denial. 2 days ago. William makes a sound, not quite a sob, not quite a shout, something primal. He moves past Agnes, up the stairs, into the twins' room as if Hamnet might still be there, finds it empty, spins around. "Where is he?" "Buried," Agnes says flatly. "Yesterday. We couldn't wait. The plague makes delay dangerous. Bodies must be buried quickly." William knows this intellectually, but emotionally he can't accept it. His son died and was buried before he could see him one last time, before he could say goodbye, before he could apologize for every absence, every broken promise. "I should have been here." Agnes says nothing. The silence is agreement. "I didn't know. The letter came too late. I wrote as fast as I could. I know." William looks at his wife, and what he sees in her face terrifies him. Not anger, not tears, nothing. She's looking at him like he's a stranger, like he's already a ghost. "Agnes, the girls are in the garden," she interrupts. "They'll want to see you." She walks away, leaves him standing in the empty room where his son slept and died without him. William finds his daughters in the garden. Judith sees him first, should run to him, but doesn't. Stands frozen, face crumpling. Susanna moves to him slowly, lets him embrace her, but her body stays stiff. The easy affection that once existed between father and children has fractured. His absence has transformed from disappointing to unforgivable. "I'm sorry," William tells them. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here." Judith finally breaks, runs to him crying. He holds both girls, and Mescal lets us see William's grief fully now. The facade of composure shattering. He sobs with his daughters, the three of them tangled together, and is genuine. The film never suggests William didn't love his children. He did. He does. But love without presence is abstract, and abstractions can't hold you when your world ends. After, William asks to see the grave. John takes him. The two brothers walk to the churchyard in silence, and at the graveside, William falls to his knees. Stays there a long time. John stands back, giving him space, but we see John's face, pity mixed with judgment. He's too kind to say what he's thinking, but we hear it anyway in the silence between them. When William finally stands, he's shaking. I should have been here, he says again, like repetition might change reality. Yes, John says simply, not cruel, just honest. What do I do now? John has no answer. What is there to do? The child is dead. Time doesn't reverse. Choices don't unmake themselves. That night, William tries to talk to Agnes. She's in the kitchen, grinding herbs, the same task she was doing the day Hamnet took sick, the same task she'll do tomorrow. Her hands stay busy because stillness means feeling and she can't afford to feel everything she's holding. Agnes. She doesn't look up. You need to decide how long you're staying. The words are knives. What? Your work? In London. How long before you have to return? William stares at her. I'm not. I won't leave you like this. I'll stay as long as you need. I don't need you. Now she looks at him and her eyes are dead. I've managed without you for months at a time. Years, if you count the days. I'll manage this too. You're grieving. You're not yourself. I'm exactly myself, Agnes says. Maybe for the first time, I'm seeing clearly. You're a visitor in this house, William. You arrive, you leave, you send money and letters and think that's fatherhood. But our son died calling for you and you weren't here. You were never here. That's not fair. Fair? Agnes laughs, bitter and sharp. Nothing about this is fair. Hamnet is dead. Judith is destroyed. Susanna blames herself for not being able to help. And you rode hard, I'm sure. Did your best to arrive in time, but your best wasn't enough because you started from too far away. You positioned yourself too far away to matter when it counted. William wants to defend himself but can't. Every word she's saying is true. He made choices, prioritized his work, his ambition, his need to be someone beyond a merchant's son from Stratford. And those choices have consequences. I loved him, William says weakly. I know. But love isn't enough, is it? Love doesn't raise children or sit with fever or bury small bodies. Agnes turns back to her herbs. Go to London when you need to. We'll be here, same as always. I want to help. Then write his name somewhere permanent. Make him matter. That's what you do. Make things matter through words. So write him somewhere that lasts. The seed is planted. We don't realize it yet, but this moment, Agnes telling William to immortalize their son. This is where Hamlet begins gestating. Not consciously, not immediately, but the idea takes root. William stays in Stratford for 2 weeks, tries to be useful, helps with repairs around the house, spends time with the girls, attends to business matters he's neglected. But his presence is awkward, intrusive. The household has learned to function without him, and his sudden involvement disrupts their rhythms. Judith clings to him when she can, desperate for connection, for someone to tell her the grief will ease. William tries, tells her stories, promises time will help, does his best to be a father. But he's out of practice, doesn't know how to comfort a child who's lost her twin, lost half her soul. Susanna is polite but distant, answers his questions, accepts his presence but never seeks him out. She's becoming a young woman and she looks at her father now with adult eyes. Sees him as he is, well-meaning but ultimately unreliable, someone to be managed rather than depended on. And Agnes barely speaks to him, moves through the house like a ghost, performing her tasks with mechanical efficiency but no warmth. At night they share a bed because propriety demands it, but there's a wall between them wider than the actual space. William reaches for her once, seeking comfort or connection, and she turns away. Don't, she says. He doesn't try again. There's a scene where William sits at the table, trying to write. He's brought his working notebooks home, thinking maybe he can draft something, make use of the time. But words won't come. He stares at blank pages, and all he can see is his son's face. Hamnet at 11. Hamnet learning to read. Hamnet watching birds with his mother. All the moments William missed, now played back in cruel detail. John finds him there, head in hands. Not writing? Can't. Maybe you need distance from it, from this. William looks up. You think I should go back to London? I think you're not helping here, and I think you're drowning. John sits down. Agnes doesn't want you here like this, broken and guilty. She needs you to be something, even if that something is absent, but productive rather than present, but useless. It's harsh, but William recognizes the truth in it. He's performing presence without actually being present, going through motions, taking up space. She hates me, William says. She's grieving and angry, and you're the easiest target. John pauses. But she also knows you, married you knowing what you were. She chose this life, in a way, just didn't anticipate how hard it would be. Should I stay? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. John shrugs. But if you go, make it mean something. Don't run away. Choose to go for a reason and make that reason matter. The conversation plants another seed. William starts thinking about his work differently. Not as escape, but as purpose. Not as abandonment, but as legacy. He can't bring Hamnet back, can't fix what's broken in his marriage. But he can write, can create something that lasts, can make his son's name echo through time. He talks to Agnes about leaving. She's in the garden, pulling weeds with violent efficiency. I think I should return to London soon. Fine, I'll send money. More than before. I'll make sure you and the girls want for nothing. Agnes laughs bitterly. We don't want money, William. We wanted you. But that ship has sailed, hasn't it? I don't know what else to give. Then give us distance. Give us the truth that you'd rather be there than here. Stop pretending otherwise. She stands, faces him. You're a brilliant writer. Everyone says so. You make audiences weep and laugh and think. So go do that. It's what you're good at. Being here, being a husband and father. You're not good at that. And I'm tired of pretending either of us believes you'll get better at it. The words should devastate him. Instead, they feel like permission, like release from an obligation he was never going to fulfill anyway. I'll write about him, William says. Our son. I'll make something that honors him. Agnes studies his face. Will you? Or will you transform him into someone else entirely? Use his death as material, but change all the details that matter. She knows him too well. I don't know yet, but I'll try. Then try. Agnes returns to her weeding. And when you've finished, send me word. I'd like to know how our son becomes art. William leaves 3 days later. Judith cries when he goes. Susanna hugs him dutifully. Agnes watches from the doorway, expressionless. John clasps his shoulder, whispers something we don't hear. And then William rides away, back toward London, back toward his work. The camera holds on Agnes in the doorway, watching him disappear down the road, watching him disappear down the road. Her face finally breaks, tears come, silent and devastating, but she wipes them quickly, turns back into the house, back to the life that continues regardless of who's present or absent. The film jumps ahead. Months pass. Winter comes to Stratford. The household adjusts to its new shape. 3 people instead of 5. Agnes, Judith, Susanna. John visits regularly. More family now than visitor. They create new rhythms, new routines. Life without Hamnet, without William. Judith struggles the most. She has nightmares constantly, wakes screaming for her twin, loses weight, loses interest in things she once loved. Agnes tries everything: herbs, distraction, comfort, tough love. But nothing quite reaches the core of her daughter's grief. Losing a twin is losing a mirror, losing a second self. Judith is incomplete in a way that can't be healed, only slowly accommodated. Susanna grows more serious, more adult, takes on household responsibilities without being asked, becomes a second mother to Judith in some ways, a manager to Agnes in others. She's 14 and acting 30, and sometimes Agnes looks at her with guilt. This girl shouldn't have to grow up this fast. But necessity shapes us all. Agnes herself moves through winter like someone sleepwalking. She performs her healing work mechanically, treats sick neighbors, delivers remedies, collects her fees. But the passion she once had for it, the deep connection to the natural world, feels muted, like that part of her died with Hamnet. Or maybe she's protecting herself, refusing to feel too deeply, because deep feeling means deep pain. Letters arrive from William occasionally. He's writing something new, he says. Something important. He doesn't name it, doesn't describe it, just hints at work that's consuming him. The letters are longer now, more detailed. He tells her about London, about the theatre, about his life there. Maybe trying to share it since she can't be part of it. Or maybe just filling pages because he doesn't know what else to say. Agnes reads the letters, has them read to her without much reaction, files them away, doesn't respond. Winter fades to spring. A year since Hamnet's death approaches. Agnes prepares for the anniversary with grim determination. She'll visit the grave, she'll mark the day somehow, she'll survive it. The night before the anniversary, Judith has the worst nightmare yet. Wakes screaming that it should have been her, that she was sick first, that Hamnet took her death for her. Agnes holds her daughter while she sobs out guilt and grief and survivor's shame. It wasn't your fault, Agnes tells her. Sickness doesn't work like that. It was random, cruel. Not your doing. But why him? Why not me? There's no why. There's just what happened. Agnes pulls back, looks at her daughter's face, so like her son's, the same features, the mirror image. Hamnet wouldn't want you destroying yourself. He loved you, loved life. Honor that by living fully, not by drowning in guilt. Judith nods, trying to believe it, failing, but trying. The anniversary comes. They visit the grave. Agnes, both girls, John, stand there in silence, each lost in private memory. Agnes brings wildflowers, the kind Hamnet liked, lays them on the earth covering her son, and something shifts, not healing exactly, but acceptance. The sharp edge of grief dulling slightly into something more bearable. He's not coming back. They have to live anyway, so they will. 2 years pass. The film compresses them through seasonal imagery, leaves falling, snow covering Stratford, spring blooms, summer heat. We see the household evolving. Judith slowly returning to herself, not the same self, but a new version built around the absence. Susanna preparing for marriage, a good match arranged with a local merchant. Agnes aging visibly, her face harder now, her movements more careful, like someone who's learned pain comes without warning. William visits occasionally, brief stays, a week here and there. The visits are cordial but distant. He sleeps in a separate room now. Agnes doesn't object. They've become something other than married business partners, maybe. Co-parents to surviving children. Two people who once loved each other and now simply coexist when geography forces it. But then, 1599, 3 years after Hamnet's death, a letter arrives different from the others. William is coming home and he's bringing something. A play. Finished. He wants Agnes to hear it. She almost refuses. Almost sends word that she has no interest in his work, that he should perform it for London audiences who care. But curiosity stops her. He said he'd write about their son. She needs to know if he did and how. William arrives in late autumn, older now, more grey in his hair, lines deeper around his eyes. Success suits him physically. He dresses better, carries himself with more confidence. But emotionally, he looks exhausted. Like someone who's been running for years and finally stopped long enough to feel the accumulated fatigue. Agnes. William. The greeting is formal. They size each other up like strangers relearning each other's faces. You look well, he offers. I look older. We both do. She gestures to the house. The girls are eager to see you. Susanna especially. She's engaged. You'll want to meet him. William nods, processes. His eldest daughter getting married. He's missed so much. And Judith? Better, some days. Agnes softens slightly. She's stronger than she thinks. They spend that first evening with the family. Susanna introduces her betrothed, a steady young man, unremarkable but kind. William approves because what else can he do? He's forfeited the right to have opinions about his daughter's lives. Judith is quieter than he remembers, more watchful. She looks at him with questions she won't ask. After the girls have gone to bed, William and Agnes sit by the fire. John's there too. Buffer and witness. You said you brought something? Agnes prompts. A play. New. It's called Hamlet. The name lands. Not Hamnet, but close enough. Agnes's jaw tightens. It's about a prince, William continues. His father dies, murdered. The son is consumed with grief and revenge. He can't move forward, can't move back. The grief destroys him and everyone around him. Sounds cheerful, Agnes says flatly. It's tragedy, but it's about what happens when loss transforms into something else, something toxic and consuming. William looks at her directly. I want to read it to you. Not all of it. It's too long. But sections. The parts that matter. Agnes considers refusing again. But she's come this far. Tomorrow, she says. After the household work. That night, Agnes lies awake thinking about names. Hamnet, Hamlet, Hamlet. One letter different. Her son transformed into a Danish prince. Death reimagined as murder rather than disease. Grief rendered as dramatic soliloquy rather than silent survival. She doesn't know yet whether to be honored or furious. The next day, William sets up in their main room, brings out his manuscript pages and pages of careful writing. Agnes sits with her mending, hands busy, while she listens. John stays, and the girls wander in and out, curious about father's work. William begins reading. His voice transforms, becomes resonant, theatrical. He is performing, not just reading, and the words are extraordinary, complex and beautiful and heavy with meaning. He reads the famous speech, to be or not to be, and Agnes recognizes immediately what he's done. Transformed Hamnet's question at his deathbed, am I dying, into philosophical meditation. Made the private public, the specific universal. Her son's final days have become literature. William watches her face as he reads, looking for reaction, for approval, for something. Agnes keeps her expression neutral, but inside she's reeling, because it's brilliant. She hates that it's brilliant, hates that he took their worst moment and made it beautiful. He reads more. Ophelia's madness, the girl driven insane by grief, handing out flowers, singing nonsense, eventually drowning herself. Agnes recognizes Judith in this. Her daughter's nightmares, her survivor's guilt, her slow fracturing after losing her twin. William watched that and made it poetic. Enough, Agnes says suddenly. William stops. You don't want to hear more? I've heard enough to understand. She sets down her mending, looks at him. You took our son's death and made it entertainment. That's not. People will pay money to watch this. Will applaud. Will call it genius. Agnes's voice shakes. And they'll never know they are watching my child die over and over. That every performance is another burial. I'm honoring him, William insists, making his name last. You asked me to do this. I asked you to remember him, to carry him with you, not to, she gestures at the manuscript, not to turn him into a character, to sell him to audiences. Judith, who's been listening from the doorway, speaks up. Is Hamlet supposed to be Hamnet? William turns to his daughter. Yes. And no. It's inspired by him, by what happened, but it's also its own story. A prince in Denmark, different circumstances, different ending. How does it end? Judith asks. Everyone dies. Judith absorbs this. Good. That's honest, at least. Agnes looks at her daughter, surprised. Judith continues. If you're going to use us truthfully. Don't pretend grief ends happily. There's steel in Judith now, forged through loss. She's not the girl she was. None of them are the people they were. William tries to explain himself. When someone dies, all we have left are stories, memories. I'm a writer. Stories are how I process things, how I make sense of them. This play is my way of grieving, of keeping Hamnet alive. He's not alive, Agnes says. He's dead. And you weren't there when he died, so you've written a fantasy where the father figure is dead and the son survives long enough to rage and question and matter. It's wish fulfillment, William. You're rewriting history, so you get to be the victim instead of the absence. The accusation hangs there. William opens his mouth to argue, then closes it. She's not entirely wrong. I'm doing the best I can, he says finally. I can't bring him back, can't fix what I broke, but I can write. So I wrote. Agnes softens fractionally. I know, and it is beautiful. Your words always are. She picks up the manuscript, flips through pages. Will you perform this in London? Yes. We begin rehearsals next month. And people will come? Will care about a sad prince? I think so. Hope so. William hesitates. I'd like you to be there. For the first performance, you and the girls. Agnes laughs, hollow. You want us to travel to London to watch you perform our son's death? I want you to see what I made from our pain. I want you to judge whether it's worthy. His voice cracks slightly. I need to know if I've dishonored him or honored him. And only you can tell me that. It's the most honest thing he's said in years. Agnes sees the genuine fear in his face, that he's done wrong, that he's taken sacred private grief and vulgarized it. She thinks for a long moment. Then, I'll come, but not the girls. They don't need to see this. Judith objects. I want to come. No, he was my brother, which is exactly why you don't need to watch him die again in front of strangers. Agnes's tone allows no argument. To William, when? Mid-December. I'll send word with exact dates. They leave it there. William stays in Stratford another few days, helping with Susanna's wedding preparations, trying to rebuild some connection with Judith. It's awkward but not hostile. They're learning how to be family in a new configuration, damaged but functional. Before William leaves, he and Agnes have one more conversation. She asks him about the character Gertrude Hamlet's mother, who remarries quickly after her husband's death. Is that supposed to be me? Agnes asks. What? No, not at all. Because I haven't remarried, haven't even looked at another man. I know that. But in your play, the mother moves on, finds someone new. Forgets the dead. William shakes his head. Gertrude doesn't forget. She survives. She makes choices that others judge. But that made sense to her. I don't condemn her in the play. Agnes considers this. Do you worry I'll move on? Find someone better? The question surprises him. Should I? John has been here every week for 3 years. Helpful, present, kind. Everything you're not. She watches William's face closely. Don't you wonder? Are you and John? No, but we could be. He's never said anything, but I see how he looks at me. And I could choose that. Choose someone who stays. Agnes pauses. I don't though, because I loved you once, and that doesn't just disappear. Even when I hate you, I love you. It's exhausting. William doesn't know what to say. She's offering him something. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement that the bond between them still exists, twisted as it is. Come to London, he says. See the play, then decide what you want. I won't blame you for choosing John, or anyone else who's actually present. I'm not deciding anything, Agnes says. I'm just stating facts. You should know where we stand. December arrives. Agnes makes the journey to London, her first time in the city. John accompanies her, chaperone and support. The scale of London overwhelms her initially. The crowds, the noise, the Thames cutting through everything, the sheer mass of humanity clamped together. William meets them, provides lodging in a decent inn near the theatre, shows her around the city, trying to impress her, maybe, or just share his world finally. The Globe Theatre is enormous. Agnes stands in the yard, looking up at the galleries, the stage jutting into the pit where groundlings will stand. This is where William's life happens, where his work becomes real. Tomorrow, he tells her, first performance. Are you ready? No. But I'll be here anyway. The next day, the theatre fills. Agnes sits in one of the galleries, paid seat, better view. The audience around her buzzes with anticipation. They've heard Shakespeare has something new, something ambitious. The play begins, and Agnes watches her life rendered as drama. Watches a son grieve a father, watches a family fall apart, watches madness and revenge and death spiral through 3 hours of stagecraft. The actor playing Hamlet, Mescal himself, we see briefly, a meta moment, brings such anguish to the role that people in the audience weep openly. Agnes doesn't weep, she watches with analytical distance, seeing what William has done. He's taken their story and made it bigger, broader, about fathers and sons and power and corruption. But underneath, she recognizes the bones of their loss. Hamnet's questions, Judith's madness, her own fury at abandonment. When Ophelia dies drowning, flowers in her hair, Agnes closes her eyes briefly. When Hamlet dies at the end, poisoned, the audience gasps. And when the final bodies are carried off stage and the lights dim, the crowd sits in stunned silence before erupting into applause. They loved it. They're devastated and exhilarated. William's gamble paid off. Afterward, William finds Agnes. Well, she takes a breath. It's extraordinary. You know it is. But it's not him. Not really. You've made mythology from memory. And maybe that's all we can ever do. Transform loss into something we can bear to look at. She meets his eyes. You've honored him in your way. I won't say you've dishonored him. But he's gone now. Twice. Once to death, once to art, and I have to accept both. William nods, grateful for even this limited approval. Agnes continues. Don't expect me to see it again. Once is enough. But you've done what you needed to do. Now let me do what I need. Live quietly in Stratford and remember my son as he actually was, not as you've made him. That's fair. They stand there, husband and wife, connected by loss and art and years of complicated history, neither quite forgiving, neither quite letting go. Let's talk about how this film actually looks. Because Zhao and cinematographer Lucas Zhao made choices that separate Hamnet from every other period drama cluttering up the prestige film landscape. This isn't Pride and Prejudice prettiness or The Favorite Fish Eye grotesquerie. This is something else. Naturalistic but heightened, grounded but dreamlike. Zhao shot the film on 35mm. Not digital, not IMAX, just good old celluloid run through an Arriflex camera. That choice matters. Film grain gives texture, creates a sense of temporal distance without feeling artificially aged. The images have weight, physicality. When you see Agnes standing in a field, you're not just watching pixels arrange themselves into a woman-shaped figure. You're seeing light literally burned into film immersion, captured and preserved. The aspect ratio is 1.85:1, not quite widescreen, not quite square. A compromise ratio that keeps human faces prominent while allowing landscape to breathe around them. Zhao uses the frame edges constantly, positioning characters at the borders looking inward or outward, creating tension through negative space. Agnes often appears slightly off-center, unbalanced in the composition, reflecting her internal state. Color palette, desaturated but not drained. Zhao and colorist avoid the teal and orange look that's infected modern cinema. Instead, they lean into earth tones, greens, greys, the occasional shock of blue from sky or water. The film looks like the English countryside actually looks, muted, soft-edged, colors bleeding into each other through perpetual mist. But watch what happens during emotional peaks. When Hamnet first falls ill, the color temperature drops. Everything goes cooler, bluer, shadows deepen, not enough to be obvious, but enough that your body registers something's wrong before your brain catches up. Conversely, flashbacks to the early romance between Agnes and William get warmer, golden hour sunlight, amber interiors, visual nostalgia for when things were simpler. Lighting strategy, natural whenever possible, supplemented minimally. Zhao used practicals, actual candles, Actual fires, actual sunlight through windows, and built around them rather than imposing artificial Hollywood lighting schemes. Which means scenes set at night are dark. Actually dark, characters' faces slip in and out of shadow. You strain to see details, same as the characters themselves would. There's this incredible scene early on where Agnes is mixing remedies by candlelight. Single candle light, minimal fill light. Her face emerges from darkness as she leans toward the flame, then disappears again as she pulls back. The effect is almost Caravaggio-esque, chiaroscuro creating depth and mystery. We're watching someone work, but we're also watching the dance between light and shadow, visibility and concealment. Camera movement, predominantly handheld but stabilized. Not shaky cam chaos, but not locked down tripod rigidity either. A gentle, breathing quality to the images, like the camera itself is alive and following these people with interest rather than clinical documentation. Zhao often shoots from slightly behind characters, over the shoulder perspectives that make us feel like we're in the room with them rather than watching from a fourth wall distance. When Agnes walks through fields, the camera walks with her. When she sits still, the camera stills. This creates an empathetic relationship between viewer and subject. We are experiencing the world through her rhythms, her pace. Contrast this with scenes of William in London, where the camera is more dynamic, more energetic, reflecting the faster pace of urban theatre life. The film uses very few establishing shots in the traditional sense. We don't get aerial views of Stratford upon Avon, don't get title cards telling us where we are. Zhao drops us into spaces and trusts us to orient ourselves through context and detail. The first time we see the family home, we see it through Agnes's POV approaching the door, not through some objective wide shot. We build our understanding of geography and space gradually, same as living in a place teaches you its layout. Depth of field varies strategically. Sometimes Zhao shoots wide open, shallow focus, isolating faces against blurred backgrounds. Other times he stops down, bringing foreground and background into sharp simultaneous focus, showing us layers of activity and meaning. There's a scene where Agnes is in the foreground treating a patient while in the background, through a doorway, we see Hamnet and Judith playing. Both planes remain in focus, showing the simultaneity of Agnes's life, work and motherhood happening at once, demanding attention in parallel. The plague scenes utilize focused lighting and shallow depth of field to create claustrophobia. When Hamnet is dying, the world contracts to just his fevered face, Agnes's hands, the sheen of sweat on skin. Background details blur into irrelevance. The flame becomes a prison, tight and suffocating. This visual strategy makes his death both intimate and unbearable. We can't look away, can't gain distance. Immediately after Hamnet's death, though, the cinematography shifts dramatically. The world opens up. Wide shots, deep focus, Agnes dwarfed by landscape. It's counterintuitive. You'd expect continued claustrophobia in grief, but Zhao's making a different point. The world doesn't contract after loss. It expands terribly, becomes too large, too indifferent. Agnes standing alone in a vast field captures her isolation more powerfully than any tight close-up could. Zhao and Zhao use reflections constantly. Mirrors, water, windows, surfaces that show us characters doubled, fractured, partially hidden. This works thematically, the twins as mirrors of each other, Agnes and William as distorted reflections of who they used to be but also simply look stunning. There's a shot of Judith looking at her reflection in a rain puddle, her face broken by ripples, that communicates her fractured post-loss identity without a single word. The film's relationship with nature feels almost documentary. When Agnes studies birds, the camera studies them too, actually watches their flight patterns, holds on details of feather and wing. When she collects plants, we see which plants, how she identifies them, the care she takes in harvesting. This isn't symbolic nature, it's actual nature, granted the same visual attention usually reserved for human actors. Weather becomes character. Rain doesn't just happen. We see it approaching, see clouds building, see the first drops hit ground. Fog rolls in slowly, gradually obscuring the world. Sunrise unfolds in real time. By treating weather as event rather than backdrop, Zhao creates a sense that the natural world is active, participant, almost conscious, which aligns with Agnes's worldview. Nature isn't setting, it's society. There's remarkable discipline in what the film doesn't show. No gratuitous establishing shots of London landmarks. No sweeping crane shots over villages. No montage sequences compressing time through rapid cuts. When time passes, we feel it through seasonal changes and aging faces, not through cinematic shortcuts. This creates a sense that we are living through these years alongside the characters rather than observing from outside. The blocking, where actors stand and move in relation to camera and each other, reinforces relationships visually. When Agnes and William are in the same room early in their marriage, they occupy the same plane, facing each other, balanced in frame. As the marriage deteriorates, they occupy different planes, one foreground, one background, separated by literal and figurative distance. By the time Hamnet dies, they are rarely in the same shot. When they are positioned at opposite frame edges, as far apart as composition allows. Conversely, the twins are always composed as unit. Symmetrical framing, matched eye lines, echoed postures. Even when they are fighting, they are choreographed as complementary halves. After Hamnet dies, Judith is often framed off center, unbalanced, with empty space where her twin should be. The absence becomes visible through composition. Zhao's use of foreground elements creates visual texture and depth. A conversation might be shot through doorways, past hanging herbs, around corners, obstacles that fragment and frame the image. This makes us work slightly to see what's happening, pulls us deeper into the act of watching. It also reflects period-appropriate architecture, cramped spaces, low ceilings, limited sightlines. The film employs very long takes in key moments. Agnes sitting with dying Hamnet unfolds in real time across several minutes without cuts. We experience the duration of vigil, the excruciating slowness of waiting for death. Similarly, the scene where Agnes receives news of Hamnet's burial plays as one continuous shot, William arriving, entering, learning, reacting, all captured in a single take that forces us to witness his grief without editorial manipulation. But Zhao also uses rapid cutting when psychologically appropriate. Judith's nightmares are rendered through fragmented images, flashes of her brother's face, the grave, her own reflection, jumbled and overlapping. The editing mirrors traumatic memory, non-linear, obsessive, recursive. The transition between past and present isn't always clearly marked. Sometimes we are watching Agnes in 1596. Then the light shifts slightly and we are watching Agnes in 1596, 10 years earlier, with young William beside her. The seamlessness of these transitions creates a sense that past and present coexist, that memory isn't separate from current experience but layered over it. Magic hour, that golden hour just before sunset, gets used strategically rather than constantly. Zhao saves it for moments of genuine beauty or significance. The twins playing at the festival, Agnes and young William falling in love, the family intact before tragedy. These scenes glow with warm light that feels earned rather than imposed. The rest of the film maintains more neutral, realistic lighting, which makes the golden moments stand out as precious. The visual treatment of London differs markedly from Stratford. London is more crowded, frames more cluttered, camera more mobile. The theatre scenes use theatrical lighting, spotlights, dramatic shadows, artificial illumination that contrasts with the natural light dominating the Stratford sequences. This visual distinction reinforces the thematic split. London is performance and artifice, Stratford is reality and nature. One of the most striking visual motifs. Hands. The film pays obsessive attention to hands working, touching, holding, healing. Agnes's hands moving to herbs. Hamnet's small hands reaching for his mother. William's hands gripping a quill. Judith's hands clutching her brother's shirt. By focusing on hands rather than faces in key moments, Zhao creates intimacy and emphasizes action over emotion. We see what people do, which reveals who they are more honestly than faces performing feeling. The camera height varies more than in typical films. Sometimes we are at eye level with adults. Sometimes a child height seeing the world from the twins' perspective. Sometimes looking down from above like gods or fate. This variation in vertical perspective creates visual dynamism and also suggests different ways of seeing. Adult understanding versus child innocence versus cosmic indifference. Costumes, production design, and cinematography work in concert to create period authenticity without museum piece sterility. Clothes are appropriately worn, stained, patched. Faces are weather-beaten, hands are rough. The camera doesn't shy away from dirt and sweat and the physical reality of 16th century life. but it also doesn't fetishize poverty or suffering. It simply shows people living, working, aging in their time. The film's visual rhythm slows as it progresses. Early sequences move briskly, full of life and energy. Post-death sequences stretch, scenes last longer, silence fills space. This deceleration mirrors grief's effect on time, how moments expand unbearably, how days become effort. Zal occasionally uses slow motion but sparingly, maybe 3 or 4 moments in the entire film. The twins running at the festival, Hamnet's final breath, Agnes collapsing at the graveside. These are rendered in slight slow motion that feels organic rather than showy, just enough to mark them as moments outside normal time. The final section of the film, when Agnes sees Hamlet performed, shifts visual language entirely. Suddenly we are watching theatre-stylized, artificial performers on a stage. The contrast between the naturalistic film we've been watching and the theatrical performance we are now observing creates meta-commentary about art and reality, about how grief gets transformed into something bearable through representation. The film ends not with closure but with continuation. Agnes walking through a field, older now, alone but not broken. The camera follows her at a distance, then stops and lets her walk out of frame. She continues beyond our scene, life continuing beyond our watching. The final image holds on empty landscape, grass, sky, wind moving through, suggesting that the world persists regardless of individual stories. Jessie Buckley walks into Hamnet carrying everything she learned from the lost daughter. I'm thinking of Ending Things and Men films where she excavated the darkest corners of female experience without flinching. But this role demands something different. Not psychological horror or surreal descent, but sustained, grounded grief. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that just breathes and keeps breathing because stopping means dying. Watch her face in the opening scenes. Agnes isn't performing mysticism or trying to seem witchy. Buckley plays her as someone who's simply paying attention to wine direction, animal behavior, plant properties. The gift isn't supernatural, it's radical presence. Most people move through the world half asleep. Agnes is fully awake, and Buckley embodies this through physical stillness and focused gaze. She doesn't blink much, doesn't fidget, exists in her body with total awareness. Her voice work is fascinating. Buckley lowers her register, speaks from chest rather than throat, gives Agnes this earthy, grounded quality. No melodic lilt, no performed femininity. She sounds like someone who spends more time talking to plants than people. When she does speak to humans, there is often a slight pause before responding, like she's translating from the language of nature into the inferior language of words. The physical transformation is subtle but complete. Buckley's naturally expressive face, mobile eyebrows, quick changing emotions gets disciplined here. Agnes contains herself, holds feeling inside until it demands release. This restraint makes the moments when she does break devastatingly effective. When Hamnet dies and she finally allows herself to collapse, it feels like a dam bursting. We watched her hold everything together for so long that her disintegration carries cumulative power. Buckley's chemistry with the child actors, especially Noah Jupe as Hamnet, feels genuinely maternal, not in a saccharine way, but in how she touches them, efficient, practical, but tender. Adjusting collars, checking foreheads for fever, the 1,000 small maintenance gestures mothers perform unconsciously. She never performs caring mother, she just cares, and her body knows how. The scene where she teaches Hamnet about bird behavior showcases Buckley's ability to convey intelligence without dialogue. Agnes isn't educated formally, can't read, but she knows things. Buckley plays this knowledge as embodied. She doesn't explain intellectually, she demonstrates physically. Points to where the falcon will strike before it does. Lets her son learn through observation rather than instruction. Her relationship with language is crucial to the performance. When Agnes has letters read to her, Buckley shows us someone who understands she's receiving information secondhand, filtered through another person's voice and interpretation. There's always slight suspicion in her face, awareness that she's dependent on others for access to her husband's words. This creates a subtle layer of vulnerability. Agnes is powerful in her domain, but disadvantaged in William's world of writing. The aging across the film's timeline is rendered through micro-adjustments. Early Agnes moves with fluid confidence. Post-Hamnet, Agnes moves more carefully, like someone who's learned the world can break you without warning. Her spine stays straight. She doesn't collapse into herself, but there's a heaviness to her movements, weight accumulated through grief. Buckley makes interesting choices with silence. Many actors feel compelled to fill silence with facial expressions, to act continuously. Buckley trusts stillness. Lets Agnes think without telegraphing every thought. Sometimes her face is simply blank, not performing blankness, just genuinely empty of readable emotion. This creates mystery, makes us lean forward trying to discern what she's feeling. The confrontation scenes with William showcase Buckley's control of rage. Agnes's anger isn't explosive, it's cold, focused, cutting. Buckley delivers accusations with almost casual cruelty, like stating facts rather than attacking. "You're a visitor in this house, William," lands harder than any screamed insult because it's spoken with such matter-of-fact certainty. The truth of it is undeniable, but watch what happens in her eyes when William leaves after Hamnet's death. He's riding away, she's watching from the doorway, maintaining her stony facade, and then he's out of sight. Her face collapses for maybe 3 seconds, just long enough for us to see the pain she's been holding, then rebuilds itself. That transition, performance to genuine feeling back to performance, happens in heartbeats. It's masterful control. Buckley also nails Agnes's relationship with her daughters, differentiating how she interacts with each. With Susanna, the eldest, there's a partnership quality. They work together as adults. With Judith, especially post-Hamnet, there's protective tenderness mixed with helplessness. Agnes can heal physical ailments but can't fix her daughter's psychic wounds. Buckley plays this limitation with visible frustration and sorrow. The final act, when Agnes watches Hamlet performed, requires Buckley to react to actors performing her life. She watches with this analytical detachment, studying how her son's death has been transformed into entertainment. Occasionally something lands too close and we see her flinch, a micro-expression quickly suppressed. She's determined not to give William the satisfaction of seeing her destroyed by his art, but the cost of maintaining that composure shows in how tightly she grips the gallery railing, how shallowly she breathes. Paul Mescal had a nearly impossible task: play William Shakespeare as a human being rather than an icon. Make us understand and sympathize with him even as he makes terrible choices. The film could have easily painted William as villain, absent father, selfish artist, but Mescal finds nuance. His physicality immediately communicates something essential. This is a young man's body carrying middle-aged burdens. Mescal moves with this coiled tension, like he is always slightly uncomfortable in his own skin, unless he is performing. In Stratford scenes, especially early in the marriage, he seems cramped by the small house, the domestic routines. Not disdainful, just physically mismatched to the space. But in London, in theatre spaces, his body relaxes, opens up. Mescal gives us a William who genuinely comes alive to his work, not as escape, but as calling. When he is rehearsing or performing, there is joy in his face that we never see in Stratford. This isn't villainy, it's tragedy. He is built for one kind of life but obligated to another. The chemistry between Mescal and Buckley carries the entire emotional architecture of the film. In flashbacks to young love, they generate genuine heat, not just sexual attraction but intellectual fascination. Young William is drawn to Agnes because she is unlike anyone else. Mescal plays this attraction as almost anthropological curiosity mixed with desire. He studies her the way she studies nature. As the marriage deteriorates, that curiosity sours into guilt-tinged obligation. Mescal shows us William calculating during domestic scenes, not consciously, but we see it in his eyes. He's doing the math of how long he needs to stay before returning to London becomes acceptable. How many family dinners equal one absence? It's subtle and damning. His scenes with the children reveal William's fundamental limitation. He loves them abstractly. Mescal plays with the kids with genuine affection, but there's always this slight performance quality to it. He's playing good father rather than being one organically. It's not malicious. He wants to connect, tries to connect, but the instinct isn't there. When Hamnet asks if his father thinks about them specifically, Mescal's face shows William realizing he doesn't, not really. He thinks about family as concept, but rarely about his actual children as individuals. The scene where William receives news of Hamnet's death is a masterclass in delayed reaction. Mescal plays it as incomprehension first. He can't process what he's being told. Then denial. then rage at himself, at circumstances, at God, then collapse. The emotions cycle through him rapidly, authentically. No single sustained note, but constant shifting as his mind tries to find a way to bear the unbearable. His arrival in Stratford post-death, bursting through the door with desperate hope that maybe it's not true. Mescal makes this simultaneously sympathetic and pathetic. We feel for him. We also recognize his hope is selfish, would require others' grief to be unfounded. When Agnes tells him Hamnet is already buried, the way Mescal's face crumbles shows us William's specific torture, not just grief but exclusion from grief. He missed the death and the burial, the key moments that might have given him closure. Throughout the middle sections of the film, Mescal gives us a William hollowed out by guilt. He functions, works, writes, collaborates, but there's a deadness behind his eyes. He's going through motions. The only time he shows genuine animation is when discussing the new play, Hamlet. Creating something from his grief gives him purpose when everything else feels meaningless. The reading scene, where William performs sections of Hamlet for Agnes, requires Mescal to code switch constantly. He's William performing Hamlet, the character, but also William performing for Agnes, his wife, but also William desperately needing validation as artist. Three layers operating simultaneously. When Agnes reacts negatively, Mescal lets us see all three identities wounded, the character interrupted, the performer rejected, the husband failing again. His final scene with Agnes. After she's watched the play, Mescal plays with total exhaustion. He's done everything he knows how to do, written the masterpiece, tried to honor his son, sought his wife's approval. And it's still not enough, won't ever be enough. Nothing can undo his absence when it mattered. Mescal embodies that realization as physical defeat, shoulders dropping, face aging in real time. The supporting cast deserves recognition too. Noah Jupe as Hamnet brings this luminous quality. He is present but seems slightly ephemeral, like he exists partially in another realm. It's perfect for a character marked for death from the title onward. Jupe never plays dying child. He plays a curious, gentle boy who happens to die. That specificity makes the loss more acute. His twin Judith, played compellingly by the young actress, gets the harder role, surviving. The film traces her disintegration and slow rebuilding with real complexity. Post Hamnet, she is playing damaged without being cliched about it. The nightmares, the guilt, the anger, it all feels developmentally appropriate rather than dramatically convenient. Alwyn as John, William's brother, provides the steady counterpoint. He is present, reliable, undramatic. Alwyn resists any temptation to make John heroic or Agnes's potential romantic alternative. He's just a decent man doing what needs doing. That simplicity is harder to play than showier roles, and Alwyn nails it. The ensemble work during ensemble scenes, family dinners, the funeral, domestic routines has this naturalistic overlapping quality. People talk over each other slightly, reach for things while others are speaking, exist in space together rather than performing for camera. Zhao clearly rehearsed them extensively, creating family rhythms that feel earned rather than imposed. Buckley and Mescal's final scene together, after she's seen Hamlet, after all the grief and anger and years, they play it as two people who know each other completely and barely at all. The intimacy and distance coexist. They stand close but don't touch. Speak honestly but carefully. It's a relationship that can be categorized simply as loving or hostile. It's both and neither and everything in between. What makes both lead performances exceptional is their commitment to contradiction. Agnes is powerful and helpless. William is selfish and sincere. Neither actor reduces their character to single attributes. They embrace the messy reality that humans contain multitudes, that grief and love and resentment can occupy the same heart simultaneously. The film asks actors to age years, to embody loss that fundamentally changes them, to navigate period dialogue and modern emotional honesty. Buckley and Mescal deliver performances that feel both historically grounded and timelessly human. You believe they are 16th century people. You also recognize their pain as utterly contemporary. That dual achievement period authenticity and emotional universality is rare and precious. Max Richter's score for Hamnet doesn't announce itself. It seeps in. You almost don't notice it's there until a cue swells and you realize your chest has been tight for minutes. That's his specialty, music that feels like emotional weather more than commentary. Here, working with Zhao, he leans into restraint even more than usual. Instrumentation stays mostly intimate. Piano, small string ensemble, sparse electronics, so subtle you question whether you're hearing them or imagining them. No big orchestral flourishes, no sweeping leitmotifs that tell you what to feel. Instead, you get motifs like ghost breath brief patterns that recur quietly at key moments, linking scenes without drawing attention to themselves. There's a simple three-note figure associated with the twins. It first appears when Hamnet and Judith race across the field at the festival, piano high in the register, almost playful. The same motif returns, slowed and thinned out, when Hamnet lies feverish in bed. Finally, in the aftermath of his death, we hear it nearly unrecognizable, stretched, fragmented, reduced to bare intervals hovering over silence. The score tracks how memory distorts over time, how familiar emotional patterns become strange when grief reshapes them. Richter understands when to recede completely. The film's most devastating scenes, Hamlet's actual death, William arriving too late, play largely without score. Natural sound dominates, breathing, floor creaks, distant birds. When music does enter around those sequences, it's usually just a held string tone or a single piano note repeating irregularly, almost like a heartbeat you only notice when it falters. Sound design carries as much narrative weight as the music. Interior spaces creak and breathe. You hear fireplaces like living creatures, wind squeezing through gaps in stone. When Agnes works with herbs, the rustle of dried leaves, the chop of knife on wood, the grind of pestle in mortar are mixed close, almost ASMR intimate. The world of healing is tactile, audible, present. Contrast that with London theatre soundscapes. The Globe is loud, crowd roar, feet on wooden galleries, actors' voices projecting, coins clinking. You feel the press of bodies, the hum of anticipation. It's not just dialogue and applause, it's the coughs, the whispers, the occasional heckle. Zhao and her sound team build a sonic environment where you understand why William feels alive there. It's noisy in a way Stratford never is. The plague has its own sonic palette. You don't hear horror movie stings or medical clatter. This is 17th century illness, quiet and domestic. But listen to how the mix changes when disease enters the house. Ambient sound seems to flatten. Outside noises muffle. Interior spaces become acoustically thick, as though the air itself has weight. Footsteps in the sick room land heavier. Breathing sounds louder. Clock moving against skin more abrasive. The sound design subtly signals that reality has altered. One recurring device, distant bells. Church bells toll for funerals, for services, for timekeeping. Early in the film, their background detail, part of village life. After Hamnet's death, every bell toll feels sharper, intrusive. The mix pushes them higher, making them cut through whatever else is happening. It's a reminder that death isn't an isolated event, it's woven into daily soundscapes. Dialogue recording leans dry, minimal reverb added, even in stone interiors. That choice keeps voices immediate, in your ear. You're not hearing characters in a historical diorama, you're hearing them like they're in the next room. Accents stay regionally plausible without becoming caricature. No one does heightened Shakespearean delivery. They speak like people, not like actors reciting verse. In outdoor scenes, especially Agnes's walks through fields, the mix foregrounds subtle environmental sounds, insect chatter, faint bird calls, far-off livestock. These layers create an almost unconscious sense of Agnes's attunement. She hears and reads these things. We do too, through her. When her connection to the natural world dims after Hamnet's death, those layers thin slightly. The world is still sounding, she's just not listening as closely. Inside the house, sound zones are clear. Kitchen has its palette fire, chopping, pots. Workroom has its own vials, grinding, soft glass clinks. The twins' bedroom carries softer textures, linen, wood creak, muffled laughter. Later, after Hamnet is gone, those bedroom sounds become echoey. You hear the same floorboard creak with one set of footsteps instead of two. Absence is painted sonically. The sequence where Agnes watches Hamlet in London deploys sound to create meta-awareness. Theatre acoustics differ dramatically from Stratford interiors. There's natural reverb in the Globe, voices carry differently, footsteps on stage thump hollow. When Hamlet speaks his soliloquies, the mix pulls his voice a hair forward, and the audience noise drops to a low bed. You're hearing the words as Agnes hears them, everything else falling away. Critically, when Hamlet William, within the film, says lines that echo, Agnes's real-life grief for a dead father, rage at a mother's perceived betrayal. The sound perspective shifts subtly toward her. We hear a faint change in the room tone around her seat, a soft emphasis on her breath. It's almost subliminal, but it recenters us. This isn't just a great performance, it's a direct hit on one woman's history. Editing ties all this together. Afonso Gonçalves and Zhao cut in a way that respects time while shaping emotional rhythm. They let whole actions play out. Agnes mixing a remedy, Hamnet walking across a room without compulsive cutting. Then, at crucial psychological beats, they slice quickly, joining images through association rather than continuity. One early example, Agnes reading via a neighbor William's letter from London. As the words are spoken, we cut not to William writing, but to small domestic details in Stratford, the crack in the wall, Judith's half-finished embroidery, Hamnet looking out a window. The edit juxtaposes his abstract ambitions with the concrete reality his absence creates. It's not showing him in London having adventures, it's showing what he's missing. Cross-cutting between William's theatre life and the family's home life intensifies as crisis approaches. While Hamnet's health declines, we get brief flashes of London rehearsals, actors joking, cues being called, laughter. Never long enough to feel like a separate storyline, just intrusive glimpses of the world William chose while his son dies. That editorial choice avoids villainizing him outright, but makes the moral contrast impossible to ignore. The film rarely uses flashbacks in the conventional signposted way. Instead, memories intrude organically, a cut from Agnes's current face to a younger version in a similar composition, or from Judith's grief-stricken eyes to the twins as small children in the same spot. Transitions are often motivated by gestures, a hand movement in present linking to the same gesture years earlier. This creates a sense that the past isn't gone, it's layered over the present, always accessible. Pacing lingers in the right places. The curtained-off space around Hamnet's sickbed feels like a temporal bubble. Shots last longer than you expect. The edit refuses to give you relief. Then, in the aftermath, time fractures. Short glimpses, Agnes washing the body, the coffin being constructed, Judith staring at the wall, the empty chair at table. The spread-out labor of death prep gets compressed into fragments, mirroring how survivors experience those hours, disjointed, unreal. Montage is used sparingly and never as generic time-passing filler. When the film jumps ahead months or years, it does so through carefully chosen details. Seasonal changes in the same landscape, the progression of wear on a door, the small ways the house evolves. Editing invites you to notice continuity. This is the same world. These are the same people, altered step by step. One particularly sharp editorial decision, we never see Hamnet's face in his coffin. The last clear image of him alive is feverish but present. The last clear image of him dead is his covered body. The edit denies us morbid closure. That restraint protects the character's dignity and keeps the grief from slipping into spectacle. Structurally, the film builds toward that London theatre sequence as an emotional climax rather than Hamnet's death itself. That's a bold editorial choice. Many films would peak at the death, then descend. Hamnet treats the artistic transformation of grief, the writing and performing of Hamlet, as the true third act event. Editing across those sections balances the play within a film and Agnes's internal response so neither overwhelms the other. When the play ends and applause erupts, the cut to Agnes's face is held just long enough. We watch her not clap, see her stand with the crowd but remain still. Then, instead of cutting to William basking in praise, the edit moves to Agnes walking out of the theatre into London night. Crowd noise fades, street sounds rise, her footsteps become a metronome. The film's priorities are clear. This is her story, even in his moment of triumph. Taken together, score, sound design, and editing create an experience that feels less like watching a historical drama and more like inhabiting a memory shared by multiple people. The technical craft isn't showy, but it's precise. Every choice, when to cut, when to hold, when to let sound fall away, serves the emotional truth of grief, how it distorts time, amplifies certain noises, renders others intolerable, and eventually, slowly, integrates into the background hum of a life that keeps going. At its core, Hamnet is wrestling with one brutal, simple question: what do we do with unbearable loss? Not abstract loss, real, personal, specific loss. A child, a twin, a future that evaporates overnight. The film's answer isn't comforting. It doesn't say time heals all wounds or everything happens for a reason. Instead, it shows three different attempts to live beside a grief that never actually leaves. Agnes's path is the path of living memory. She doesn't move on, she moves with. The world keeps demanding practical things of her: children to raise, remedies to make, food to cook, and she keeps doing them, carrying Hamnet inside every action. When she walks through fields years later, alone, you can tell she's seeing the kid running ahead of her, hearing his questions about birds and clouds even in silence. Her healing gift, once a comfort, becomes double-edged. She reads signs in nature constantly. Now every sign reminds her of the one thing she couldn't foresee or prevent. There's a quiet, radical honesty in how the film portrays her grief. It doesn't turn Agnes into a saint. She gets bitter. She weaponizes truth in arguments with William. She withdraws from people who mean well because their presence hurts. She loves and hates the same person in the same breath. Yet, she never stops showing up for Judith and Susanna. That might be the film's clearest statement. Grief doesn't absolve you of responsibility. The house still needs tending, children still need raising, life still needs living, even when you don't want it. William's path is transformation through art, and Hamnet is both admiring and suspicious of it. On one hand, he does what Agnes asks. He makes their son's name echo through history. He takes private pain and shapes it into Hamlet, a play that forces audiences to sit with death and doubt and the inadequacy of language. That's not nothing. It's huge. The film respects the power of that transformation. Those London sequences crackle with creative energy for a reason. But there's a cost. To turn Hamnet into Hamlet, William has to fictionalize, aestheticize, repurpose. He flips the script, kills the father instead of the son, lets the boy rage and question instead of die quietly in a small bed. In doing so, he creates something truer than truth, in one sense, and deeply untrue in another. The film never lets him off the hook for that. Agnes's accusation that he's rewritten their story to cast himself as victim rather than absentee isn't fully refuted. So you get this uneasy tension, art as both salvation and theft. William survives his grief by metabolizing it into theatre. But that survival is built on exporting some of that pain to audiences, to actors, to Agnes sitting in that gallery seat, hearing her life turned into poetry. The film isn't telling you that's wrong or right. It's asking whether honoring the dead through art justifies the liberties taken with their reality, and it won't answer for you. Judith's path is the hardest to watch and the easiest to miss if you're not paying attention. She's the twin left behind, the half person forced to become whole without her other half. She doesn't have Agnes's earth-rooted resilience or William's artistic outlet. She has nightmares, guilt, the sense that her very existence is a kind of theft, that she lived the life that was supposed to be his. That kind of survivor's guilt doesn't go away because someone wrote a masterpiece. It sits in the body. The film quietly suggests Judith channels that guilt into stubborn survival. Her line about Hamlet, that if you are going to use their pain, it had better be honest, isn't just a critique of her father's play. It's her own demand of herself. If she's going to keep living in Hamlet's place, she'd better not pretend everything's fine. Her adult self, glimpsed briefly in the film's later passages, carries loss openly. No quiet erasure. No neat closure. Underneath these individual paths runs a deeper theme, the limits of understanding between people, even those who love each other fiercely. Agnes and William are, in some ways, perfectly matched, both intensely perceptive, both drawn to patterns and meaning, but their ways of knowing are incompatible. She reads weather and bodies, he reads texts and audiences. They spend a lifetime talking past each other, interpreting the same events through different lenses. The plague, Hamnet's death, becomes the ultimate event they can't agree on how to live with. Agnes wants it to remain sacred, private, a wound tended in silence. William needs to externalize it, to build something from it that the world can see. Neither path is wrong. Both are necessary for different people. The tragedy is that their marriage can't encompass both fully. Their love can't bridge that gap. Yet the film refuses total despair. It finds its small, stubborn hope in continuity, not of happiness, but of meaning. Hamnet dies, yes, but his existence changes everyone he touched. Agnes sees the world differently forever. Judith becomes someone forged by absence. William writes a play that will speak to strangers centuries later about grief they haven't yet experienced. None of that replaces him. It doesn't compensate. But it does insist that his 11 years matter beyond the grave. That final image, Agnes walking out of frame while the landscape remains, says it without words. This story is one among countless others. People have buried children in every century, in every country, under every set of circumstances. Most of those stories vanish unrecorded. Hamnet argues that recording even one of them with this much care and specificity is an act of moral attention. It won't fix anything. It won't bring anyone back. But it keeps us from looking away. And maybe that's the film's quiet demand of its audience. Don't look away. Not from the mundane labor of caregiving. Not from the messy contradictions of art and exploitation. Not from the unbearable fact that love offers zero guarantees of time. Watch Agnes grind herbs after the funeral. Watch William stand under stage lights built from his son's shadow. Watch Judith learn to live with a permanent absence at her side. Then, when the credits roll and you step back into your own life, remember that every ordinary field, every tired parent, every kid asking a too big question is carrying their own version of this story. You don't get to solve it, but you can bear witness. That, the film suggests, is its own kind of fragile grace. Now let's dig into something we haven't really touched on yet, the women of Stratford and how Agnes navigates her place among them. Because Hamnet doesn't just show one isolated healer, it's embedded in a whole network of women's knowledge that the film renders almost invisibly unless you're watching closely. Zhao populates the background of Agnes's life with other women, the midwife who taught her herbs as a girl, the neighbor who reads William's letters with barely concealed judgment, the market women who trade gossip and remedies in equal measure. These aren't named characters with arcs, they're the chorus, the community that both sustains and polices Agnes. Watch the scene where she delivers a baby during a storm hands steady, while thunder crashes outside, the other women hovering with hot water and prayers. No dialogue explains their roles, you just see a web of competence, each woman knowing her place in the ritual. Agnes leads because her gifts make her essential, but she's not above them. She asks for specific herbs by name, accepts their towels and encouragement without pride. This communal knowledge system fascinates because it's entirely practical, undocumented, passed mother to daughter or mentor to apprentice. Agnes never went to university, never led Galen or Hippocrates. Her medicine comes from dirt under fingernails, from trial and repeated error, from watching which poultices work on which wounds. The film shows this epistemology in action. When plague rumors start, the women gather at Agnes's house, not for instruction, but for confirmation. Elderberry and garlic? One asks. Agnes nods, adds rose hips. They disperse with their bundles, each to treat their own families. What Zhao captures brilliantly is how fragile this system is. One bad harvest, one accusation of witchcraft, one generation without daughters to teach, and it's gone. Agnes knows this. You see it when she works with Susanna. Not teaching her healing exactly, but planting seeds. This one for fevers, she'll say, handing her daughter a bundle without further explanation. Susanna nods, remembers. The film never spells it out, but this is knowledge transmission under existential threat. Contrast that with William's world of male scholarship. London theatres run on text scripts copied by scribes, patrons demanding dedications, rival playwrights plagiarizing each other. Knowledge there is written, owned, monetized. Agnes's knowledge evaporates if she's not there to speak it. William's knowledge outlives him on the page. The film stages this tension visually, Agnes always surrounded by living things, plants, children, animals, William surrounded by paper and ink. Her legacy is organic, fragile, rooted. His is portable, durable, extractive. Dig deeper into Agnes's isolation within that female network. The other women respect her skill, but fear her intuition. There's always that pause when she predicts something uncanny. A death, a birth complication, a weather shift. They accept the remedy, but question the knowing. One scene shows it perfectly. A woman brings her sick child to Agnes, watches her mix the draught, then hesitates at the door. You saw this coming? She asks. Agnes shrugs, saw signs. The mother crosses herself leaving, not hostile but wary. Agnes's gift makes her necessary until it makes her threatening. This dynamic peaks post Hamnet. When plague actually hits their house, neighbors stop coming to her door. Not because she failed, Hamnet's death was random, inevitable, but because tragedy contaminates. If the healer can't save her own son, What hope for theirs? Agnes doesn't fight the ostracism. She withdraws further into her workroom, grinds herbs alone. The film shows empty doorways where women used to gather. Silence where there was chatter. Her value was always conditional. Yet here's the radical part. Agnes never adapts. Doesn't soften her edges. Doesn't perform normalcy. Doesn't beg for acceptance back. She exists as she is. Fierce, strange, powerful in ways that unsettle. Buckley plays this with a stillness that borders on defiance. Agnes knows her worth isn't determined by village approval. Her validation comes from results. The child she saved last week. The crop that thrived under her weather reading. Social exile is the tax she pays for competence. Now pivot to production design because Fiona Crombie's work deserves its own deep dive. Most period films treat sets like museum exhibits. Polished wood, immaculate thatch, costumes without a single stain. Crombie goes opposite, lived in decay that feels archaeological. The family house isn't quaint Tudor cottage from a heritage tour. Walls smoke-stained black at shoulder height from years of hearth fires. Floors uneven, warped by damp. Windows murky, not sparkling glass but animal bladder stretched thin, distorting light into wavering pools. Details reward scrutiny. Agnes's workroom isn't a Hollywood apothecary with neat labeled jars. It's chaos controlled, bundles hanging from every rafter, dirt-crusted roots piled in corners, pestles worn smooth from decades of use. You can imagine previous generations of women working the same space, same tools passed down, no decorative touches, no wall hangings, no polished platters. Everything serves function. Even beauty, like the wildflowers Agnes keeps fresh, serves purpose, attracting beneficial insects, scenting the air. The garden outside tells Agnes's story visually. Not manicured herb garden, but wild sprawl, useful plants competing with weeds, paths worn where she walks most, certain areas trampled bare from where children played, a corner given over entirely to compost rotting leaves, kitchen scraps, the cycle of decay feeding growth. Crombie designs it so you can read Agnes's daily rhythms in the dirt patterns, her priorities in what's cultivated versus what's allowed to thrive naturally. Costume design follows the same philosophy. Buckley's Agnes wears the same brown kirtle through half the film, accumulating visible wear, mud at hem, frayed cuffs from herb handling, darker patches where she's wiped hands absent-mindedly. No costume changes for drama. Clothes age with character. When Susanna dresses for her betrothal, she borrows Agnes's second-best bodice. Not new finery, but upgraded from workwear. Practicality over vanity. London costumes mark the class divide sharply. William's theatre colleagues wear slightly better fabric, richer dye, true purple rare and expensive, shoes without holes. But even they show wear ink stains on cuffs, wine spills on doublets, no one spotless. Crombie avoids the trap of making rich people cleaner. Life leaves marks on everyone. Props carry narrative weight. William's quills sharpen progressively finer as his success grows. Agnes' mortar deepens visibly over time, surface polished to mirror sheen. The twins share a single wooden bowl as babies, then individual ones as they age. Small marker of growing autonomy. Hamnet's birthday book from William gathers dust on a shelf, never opened. Objects accumulate meaning without dialogue explanation. Crombie's masterstroke, sensory continuity. Scent suggested through textures, lavender bundles, wood smoke patina, tactility through visible wear patterns. You smell the house through soot layers, feel the damp through moss on exterior stones. Production design doesn't just set scene, it immerses completely. Now consider the children, not as cute plot devices, but as fully realized agents, whose perspectives the film honors without patronizing. Noah Jupe's Hamnet isn't the doomed kid. He's a specific person, curious about mechanisms, watches gearwork in John's workshop with mechanical intensity, gentle with animals, free-strap birds rather than Judith's skill. An examine approach, struggling with abstraction, Latin lessons frustrate him, he'd rather dissect a frog. Jupe plays 11 perfectly, that cusp between childhood wonder and adolescent self-consciousness. The twin dynamic goes beyond surface mirroring. Judith leads physically, Hamnet emotionally. She drags him on adventures, he tempers her impulses. When she wants to climb the highest tree, he doesn't stop her, but positions himself to catch if she falls. Their fights feel authentic, not scripted cuteness, but sibling warfare over real stakes. Who gets the last apple slice? Whose turn to fetch water? Post-death, Judith's arc becomes the film's emotional spine. not recovery, but adaptation to asymmetry. She sleeps curled fetal, walks with one shoulder lower as if unbalanced, reaches instinctively for someone who isn't there. Susanna's arc gets less screen time but equal depth. At 13, she's already dividing her world, practical domestic versus imaginative wild. She manages kitchen while twins roam fields but sneaks moments reading William's old play fragments by candlelight. Her betrothal isn't romantic triumph but pragmatic step. She likes the merchant boy well enough, sees the security he offers, accepts the trade of freedom for stability. The film respects her calculation without judgment. Child performances integrate with adults seamlessly. No kids acting with adults' awkwardness. Jupe matches Buckley's intensity shot for shot. The young actress playing Judith meets Mescal's emotional complexity. Zhao cast for chemistry, rehearsed for naturalism. Result: children who exist in the same reality as their parents, equally capable of joy, boredom, fear, insight. Theological undercurrents surface subtly. Agnes practices folk. Christianity crosses herbs before using. Prays efficiently without fervor. Hedges bets with older rituals. Binding fever with knotted cord. Whispering to moon. Church scenes show rote attendance. Priest droning Latin peasants barely understand. Hamnet's funeral gets perfunctory rites. Real grief happens back home. William's London carries different spiritual flavor. Pagan echoes in theatre, masks, communal trance, Renaissance humanism in play debates, fate versus free will. No one converts or preaches. Faith simply textures worldview. Agnes trusts patterns in nature as divine language. William wrestles God through soliloquy. Their son's death tests both systems without resolving either. Class consciousness permeates without lectures. Agnes treats gentry and labourers identically. Same remedies, same brusque manner. William navigates theatre patronage with careful deference masking contempt. John's glove making represents honest middle, skilled labour, modest prosperity, community respect. Film critiques mobility's cost. William's ascent requires abandoning origins. Agnes's rootedness limits reach. No heroes among classes, just trade-offs. Historical texture rewards rewatches. Details like plague protocols, quick burials, house quarantine marks, literacy rates, most women illiterate, men variably, medical limits, bloodletting abandoned by Agnes as ineffective, ground without pedantry. Zhao consulted historians but trusts audience intelligence. No explanatory dialogue, just show. The film's final gesture, Agnes walking from frame, achieves profound simplicity. No voiceover, no swelling music, no family reunion. Landscape endures. One woman moves through it, changed but moving. Credits roll over that image, forcing you to sit with emptiness. Not despair, continuation. Grief integrates but doesn't end. Art testifies but doesn't heal. Life persists regardless. This is cinema that trusts you completely. Demands attention to half-glimpsed gestures. Background lives, unspoken tensions. Rewards with cumulative power. 10th viewing reveals new layers in third act glances, new meanings in first act shadows. Hamnet doesn't explain itself. It inhabits itself. You either enter that world or you don't. Those who do emerge altered, carrying its questions into their own unfinished stories.